Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome. My name's Alison Stewart and I'm your host for this session of Cut the Crop. And today we have our resident FAR senior maize researcher, David Densley. Welcome, David.
Hello, Alison, and thank you. Good to be here again.
I know, you're a regular now, David, a regular. So obviously when you came on board, we developed, a strategic maize sort of plan of attack, because up until, you came on as a FAR researcher, we didn't have a clear idea of exactly what we wanted to achieve, out of the range of maize research that we were doing. So we did a strategic review.
That's right.
And now we have a plan of attack. So at the high level, just talk about what FAR is trying to achieve with its maize research program.
Yes, and what you're referring to there, Alison, is our 5 pillars of research. And so within that, there are 5 or 6 areas that we're really focusing on. And they include cover crops, so nitrogen use efficiency, long-term establishment, the multi-hybrid by population trials and research that we're doing, spatial variability of soil nitrogen, and South Island maize, where we're looking at row width by population, just to name a few of the things we're doing, Alison. So we have a busy schedule.
But I mean, if you just look at all of those collectively, in 5 years' time, what do you want to have achieved out of all of those different programs of work for the maize grower?
Indeed. So, we think about our 5 pillars. So what keeps us, gives us direction within those 5 pillars are 3 areas of focus. So one's around our profitability. So how does that research help me as a farmer improve my profitability or retain my profitability? The other one is around resilience within my system. So with climate change and more extreme events, resilience to climate becomes really important as well. And then the third one is around the environment. So are those practices, the research that we're doing, are those practices going to allow me to be compliant with my environmental requirements moving forward? So then our research aims to answer 1, 2, or 3 of those, Alison. So what we hope to achieve...
All of them.
All of them, that's right. And I think if you take apart each one of those research projects that we're doing, I think most of them actually will help us with the 3 of them. So that's exciting for us.
And I think it's really important that, growers and levy payers understand that we're constantly trying to balance those 3 big sort of outcomes. Yes. You've got to be profitable, yes. Otherwise, you can't continue your business, but you've got to be profitable within, a social license to operate that is changing. What you could do and was acceptable 10 years ago is no longer the case, and what may be acceptable in 10 years' time, well, who knows what that is. So it is a balancing act, and we do have to cover all of those 3 sort of key outcome areas. So let's sort of dive down into some of those individual sort of topics that you talked about.
Yes.
And let's talk about the cover crop work to begin with.
So now, just to put some perspective around that, so a cover crop is really a winter crop. There's lots of different names for it. So cover crop, cash crop, or catch crop. They're the 3. So they really are winter crops. And so we're looking at, alongside of our research station at Tamahiri, we've got a number of on-farm research sites as well. Part of that, our refresh on our maize research, we're actually out on farm now as well. So we're looking at a number of different cover crops. Including ryegrass. I mean, ryegrass would be the standard go-to winter crop for us. And so we're looking at clovers and some of the other legumes as well, some of the other annual legumes. And so we're looking at so from a financial point of view, what can these cover crops contribute? But also those cover crops need to fit within a maize system, Alison. So we don't. So really, the cover crops are the servant of the maize, right? Because maize is going to be the prime. Within a maize production system, maize is the highest highest income generator. So our cover crops have to fit within the maize system. So we're looking at, what the performance of those cover crops, and also how those cover crops influence the following maize crop. So that's our real cover crop research.
And are you doing the cover crop work down in the South Island as well, or is this to begin with just focused in the North Island?
Just in the North Island for now.
Okay. So what about the nitrogen use efficiency work?
Boy, and nitrogen is the hot topic, right?
It most certainly is.
Yep. And the thing about nitrogen is there's two considerations with nitrogen. One is around the cost of nitrogen. And we're going to talk about that. We've talked about that in another podcast around the cost of nitrogen, how that's increased. And then the other impact is with nitrogen is the nitrous oxide emissions, right? And so that's a greenhouse gas. It's a major greenhouse gas within the arable industry, as we know. So there we're looking at two winter crops. So we've got a ryegrass and then a vetch, and the vetch is a legume. Of course, the ryegrass is not. So two cover crops, and then over the top of that, 3 nitrogen management strategies inside the maize production system. So one would be no nitrogen, the other one would be what's considered good practice, and then the third one would be sort of a standard practice currently. So that's really interesting research, and the first year of data shows some very useful information, and that is that, as you would expect, the legume is contributing to some nitrogen. So that's less nitrogen we have to buy, right? And that's less nitrogen that we might be emitting to the atmosphere through the use of something like urea.
So obviously a key topic, as it is with all of FAR's other crops that we focus on. Long-term establishment.
So long-term establishment is exactly that. So there we're looking at 3 different establishment systems. So cultivation, strip till, and no-till over a long period. So the long-term establishment trial itself is actually at our Tamahiri site. This is for maize, right? So we have others down here at Chertsey. Where we're looking at the impact that the 3 different establishment systems have on soil quality, the organic matter from those different treatments, soil aggregate stability, and then, of course, the impact it has on profitability. Now, the long-term establishment research is part of a wider bit of research that we're doing on farm. So we're taking some of these learnings and some of these work and extending it out to our on-farm research. So we call that the maize establishment system. So we've got cultivation, no-till, and strip-till over the top of cover crops. And so that's another lot of research that's really helping us understand, can we apply these different establishment systems, does this moving to strip till and no till, does that improve our profitability? Does it give us more resilience within the system? And can it help us from an environmental point of view as well? So they all fit very nicely into those 3 core principles that we're doing within our research.
Yes, and we have got another podcast where we're talking to one of our growers leading change arable growth groups, where they're actually doing some sort of on-farm trials looking at that, particularly down in the Manawa too. So there's lots of interlinking pieces of work that ultimately will deliver some hopefully nice solutions and options for maize growers. What else have we got? We've got the multi-hybrid population trials.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that. That's a little bit unusual.
It is a bit unusual, and I think we can make a claim here to the first one in New Zealand to be doing this research. So just quickly then, so for maize growers, they spend some time with their seed company or their merchant, their rural professional, deciding on the hybrid they want to plant in their paddock. Okay, so that paddock might be high-yielding paddock, and so they'll choose a high-yielding hybrid. they might have another paddock that actually is more drought prone. So they want to choose a hybrid that is more defensive or has more drought tolerant capabilities. Often you choose a hybrid that has got more drought tolerance, you might give up some top end yield. So that's the current practice. But within a paddock, we know that there's that variability, right? So there's a high yielding zone within the paddock often, and then there's a low yielding area within the paddock. Well, if we're going to the trouble of choosing the right hybrid trait by paddock, then logically it might make sense that we actually choose the right hybrid by zone within the paddock. Yeah. So here we're planting, we've got two hybrids. Our planter, our maize planter is quite innovative, and so we've got the ability to be able to put two hybrids within the same planter hopper, and those in the maize industry will understand that. They're separated, and as we go through the high yield zone, we plant the offensive hybrid. That is one that has got really high yield potential. And then when we go through the dry areas, we actually plant the defensive hybrid, which has more drought tolerant, won't have the same top end yield, but it can cope with the drought more. And then over the top of that, then we're actually saying, okay, well, we change hybrids by zone, by yield zone. Well, let's change the population by yield zone as well. So I think this has got some real application for us moving forward. Actually, adding to that, there's some really good survey out of the United States now where the survey was around asking leading maize growers what technologies they'll be using moving forward, and variable rate population was high on their list, as was variable rate fertilizer. So this research will help answer some questions out into the future, Alison. So we need to be future looking with our research.
Yeah, You just think of maize being a fairly simplistic sort of crop, but you're introducing levels of complexity and sophistication there. Let's just hope that that it balances out in the the extra management practices will deliver more consistent, higher yielding sort of situations. So time will tell. That's what research is all about. You try things that seem a little bit out there, and we just see whether they work or not.
Oh, look, absolutely, and I think, Alison, we also need to remember that based on some survey work out of the UK, New Zealand has the second most expensive agricultural land in the world, based on this survey. So if we've got this expensive land, then we need to maximise, we've got the capital tied up in that land, so how do we maximise our yield, which improves our ROI, or return on capital? Really important.
So spatial variability of soil N, that's another area.
It is. So we're going to, in another podcast, we're going to talk about deep N and what that means and what that looks like. This work is looking at is soil N variable across the field, right? So if you adapt or adopt deep N sampling as part of your strategy around managing nitrogen, then so how do you go about sampling? So should you just collect a sample like you do currently with a soil test, right? And that is a transect through the field. You get one number, and then you apply your nitrogen management based on that one number. Does that work? And so this work is looking at 1 hectare grids. So we're looking at, so in this case, the field is a 17 hectare farm just outside of Te Awamutu. And in 1 hectare grids, we're actually sampling the deep N on a hectare by hectare basis, trying to understand that spatial variability of nitrogen, because that will help then if there is, and there is, the research, we're already 2 years into this research, and there's absolute variability, and that probably won't surprise us, but it's nice to quantify that. There is variability out there, and so if we're going to do deep N, then where we sample becomes really critical for us.
Yep. Excellent. And then the last little sort of program of work is the work that we're doing down in the South Island.
Yes, and we're certainly not. The maize industry is very inclusive. We're not certainly forgetting the South Island, because under climate change, as we know, we're warming up, and there'll be more maize grown in the South Island, guaranteed. And so. Because in the South Island has slightly cooler growing conditions, our management strategy has to be different or refined compared to what it might be up in Kaitaia, for example. So there we're looking at row width. So the standard row width in maize is 76 centimetres. That's a standard row width pretty much around the world, 76 or 75 centimetres. There's some good research out of North America showing that as you go north in North America, that is, as you get cooler, you get a response to narrowing up the row. So going from 76 centimetres to 50 centimetres or even 38 centimetres. And that's because you're intercepting more light, right? So with maize, it's a C4 plant, solar radiation is really important. So the quicker we can get row cover, the more light we harvest, right? So if you narrow up the row, we get row cover sooner, we're capturing more radiation sooner. And so that's we think that'll have some positive implications for yield. And then on top of that, then can we narrow up the row and then even increase the population more? Because in cooler growing conditions, you often plant a shorter maturity hybrid. They don't grow as tall, so you want more population. So you increase the population as well. So that's our row width by population research. I'm excited about that. That's a long-term approach for us, and we're going to be doing a lot more work around that, Alison.
And so when you say we, let's talk about the team, because, I mean, obviously, like, you're the rock star of maize, and everyone thinks that, you're doing everything. But, it is a FAR team, and there's, there's a lot of different people involved in this. So just talk about the team.
Yep. Look, absolutely, Alison. That's really important to mention. So, of course, someone has to sort of get in the seat at the podcast. Only one person can do that, and then with a lot of our Beyond First Principles workshops, then obviously there's the one person that's doing most of the speaking. But without the team, we could not be doing the research. And my team in the Waikato, a big shout out to them. Steve and Sam, you rock. They do all the hard lifting up in the North Island. And that allows you and I to have these sorts of conversations because they're working away in the background there. The problem is with listing people, do you forget people, right? So
it's like accepting an award and you forget to thank
people. So, but then there's Dirk, absolutely. Dirk Wallace and Abby Horrock as well. Owen Gibson, who's doing the work around the narrow row, and of course the graduates as well that are supporting us. I'm just thinking, who have I?
The environmental team as well, coming along. I mean, it's sort of like, all of the disciplines, that we have in the research, team at FAR, they're all being brought into the maize space, and in the past we possibly didn't do that as well as we could have, where we weren't necessarily leveraging our maize research off the wider FAR research that we were doing. And I think we've now got more integration and more free flow of knowledge from, sort of non-maize crops into maize and from maize into non-maize crops. And I think it's working really well.
Look, absolutely, and we've all got different skill sets, Alison, and part of a team is bringing those different skill sets into that, isn't it, really? And like you said, some of the things that we're learning in maize can be applied to other crops as well, right? So deep end sampling, for example, that applies to all crops, and that whole spatial variability, and some of the research around precision ag, absolutely.
So obviously we've got a huge amount of work now going on in maize. How are you going to get this out to the maize growers? How are they going to know what FAR is doing?
Yes, and of course doing research is only part of the journey, isn't it? So we need to share that with those people that make decisions, farmers and rural professionals, and then it has to be applied on farm, because if it's not applied on farm, then probably we're not doing our job properly. So we're using a number of platforms to do that. So we've got some field days coming up, and so you need to just watch this space, check your emails from FAR, and check the website as well. We've got a major field day. So we launched our maize conference in this February gone past. That'll be every second year, and the alternate years we actually have a major field day at our research side of Tamahiri. So we're doing that. And then the Beyond First Principles workshops as well. As per the podcast we did on that, we share that research at the Beyond First Principles. So all those things, Alison. And of course, our gate is always open. So meaning the gate at the research farm, if anybody ever wants to come in and have a look at what we're doing, they by all means, they're absolutely welcome. We've always got the red carpet out, so they just need to let us know. We can organise a time to show anybody what we're doing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David. Another great podcast. Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.